Good evening. You've arrived at a quiet place meant for rest. There is nothing you need to focus on here, nothing you need to understand, nothing you need to remember later. This is not a lesson. It isn't a story that builds toward an ending. It's simply a calm science narration, spoken slowly and designed to remain in the background as you rest. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to follow each sentence from beginning to end. If your attention drifts away, that's completely fine. Right now, your body is already doing what it knows how to do. Breathing continues on its own. The surface beneath you is already supporting your weight. There's no adjustment required. This time is not for effort. There's nothing to improve or change. Tonight's topic is time, not as something to analyze, not as something to solve, just as something that moves quietly in the background. Time doesn't announce itself as it passes. It doesn't arrive all at once. Most of the time, it's only noticed through gentle change. Light shifts slowly across the evening. Sounds soften as activity fades. The body follows patterns that don't need to be directed. Everything you'll hear tonight is based on well-established scientific understanding. Nothing speculative, nothing designed to surprise. The information is shared softly, without urgency, because nothing here is happening quickly, and nothing requires your response. If you fall asleep while listening, that's expected. If you remain awake for a while, that's fine too. The narration doesn't depend on sequence. It doesn't move toward a conclusion. It simply continues at a steady pace. You may notice pauses between phrases. Those pauses are intentional. They leave space for the nervous system to settle without being asked to do anything. Thoughts may come and go. They don't need to be followed. They don't need to be held. For now, all that matters is that you're here, resting. Listening if you want to, not listening if you don't. The science will unfold quietly in the background, slowly, evenly, just as time itself tends to do. As you continue resting, there's no need to change your position unless your body naturally wants to. If you're already comfortable, stillness can remain just as it is. Breathing is already happening. It doesn't need direction. It doesn't need to be slowed or deepened. Each breath arrives on its own, and then it leaves, without effort. The body understands this rhythm. It has been following it long before there was anything to think about. The muscles in your face may already be softening, around the eyes, along the jaw, the tongue resting naturally in the mouth. Nothing needs to be released on purpose. There's no command to relax. Your nervous system moves toward rest when the environment feels quiet and predictable. The shoulders may feel heavier now, not pulled downward, just supported. Gravity is doing what it always does, evenly, without urgency. Your arms are where they are. They don't need to be symmetrical. They don't need to be positioned correctly. They're simply present, resting along with the rest of the body. If there's any remaining tension, it doesn't need to disappear. The body doesn't require complete relaxation in order to rest. It only needs time and safety. The chest rises and falls at a pace that suits you. That pace may shift slightly from one moment to the next. This is normal. Breathing adjusts continuously without being noticed. It responds to the needs of the body without asking for attention. Lower in the body, the abdomen moves gently with each breath. There's no need to hold it in, no need to control it. It responds naturally to pressure and release. Your legs are supported by the surface beneath you. Their weight is already being carried. There's nothing to hold upright. The knees don't need attention. The calves don't need to change. The feet can remain at the far end of the body, quiet and unremarkable. As these sensations remain steady, the brain begins to notice the absence of demand. There's no task, no response required. This is often when mental activity starts to slow, not because it's being forced to, but because there's nothing pressing to react to. Thoughts may still appear. They might be fragments from earlier in the day, images, unfinished phrases. They don't need to be pushed away. They don't need to be followed. They can pass through the mind the same way distant sounds pass through a quiet room. Present for a moment, then gone. If your attention drifts away from these words, that's completely fine. The body doesn't need constant input. It responds just as well to consistency and tone. The voice you're hearing isn't here to guide you somewhere specific. It's here to remain steady, providing a calm reference point that doesn't require focus. There's nowhere else to be, nothing else to prepare for. The night doesn't ask for readiness. You can continue resting exactly as you are, breathing, supported, unchanged. The body already knows how to do this. As the body remains settled, attention often becomes less focused on specific sensations. It begins to open into a broader sense of steadiness. There isn't a clear boundary between being awake and resting deeply. Instead, there's a gradual shift, one that happens quietly, without any signal to mark it. In the natural world, many changes unfold this way, not in sudden steps, but through slow transitions that are easy to overlook. Light fades across the evening without a clear moment when day becomes night. Temperature shifts gradually, almost imperceptibly. Sounds grow softer as activity decreases. These changes don't require coordination. They don't respond to observation. They continue whether or not anyone is paying attention. The body is familiar with this kind of movement. It developed within environments shaped by repetition and gentle variation, not by constant alerts or sharp boundaries. Because of that, predictable patterns tend to feel safe. They don't demand quick reactions. They don't signal urgency. This is often where the idea of time begins to appear, not as something defined, but as something sensed. Time doesn't usually arrive as a single event. It's noticed through change, through continuity, one moment following another, at a pace that doesn't need to be monitored. In everyday life, much of this movement goes unnoticed. Minutes pass without being counted. Hours move forward without drawing attention to themselves. The systems around us continue quietly. Processes unfold without interruption. Nothing asks to be marked or recorded. In science, many of the patterns we describe behave in this same way. They don't require supervision. They don't need to be corrected as they progress. Once established, they tend to continue under stable conditions, sometimes for long periods of time. This continuity is important. It allows the mind to rest. When there's no need to track progress, attention can soften. It no longer needs to stay organized around sequence or outcome. There's no requirement to imagine timelines or distances, no need to picture clocks or numbers. If images appear on their own, they can pass naturally. If no images appear, that's fine too. What matters more is the sense of gradual movement, the feeling of things unfolding at a pace that doesn't rush toward an ending. In this state, time doesn't need to be managed. It doesn't need to be held.
it can simply be present in the background, like a steady current that doesn't draw attention to itself. The voice continues evenly, not to hold focus, but to provide consistency, something predictable enough that the mind doesn't need to stay alert. This is often when thinking becomes less verbal, less structured, not because it stops entirely, but because it no longer needs to organize itself around tasks or decisions.
Rest doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in layers. First in the body, then in the breath, and gradually in the space between thoughts. There's no need to notice when this happens, no moment that needs to be marked. The process continues on its own, and the quiet science story will continue too, moving at the same unhurried pace as the slow patterns it begins to describe. When scientists talk about time, they often begin with something very simple. They describe it as a way of noticing change. Not change all at once, but change that happens gradually, in consistent patterns. Time, in this sense, isn't something that moves on its own. It's a way of describing how systems shift from one state to another. In everyday life, these shifts are often marked by repetition. Day follows night. Light returns after darkness. These cycles don't require interpretation. They don't need to be explained in order to continue. Long before precise instruments existed, people noticed these patterns. They observed shadows changing position. They noticed the regular return of light and dark. These observations didn't define time. They simply provided reference points. In science, measurement works in a similar way. Rather than asking what time is, it asks how change can be compared. A clock, at its simplest, doesn't create time. It marks steady movement. Something repeating at a regular pace. A motion that can be counted without being influenced by attention. Mechanical clocks once used the swing of a pendulum, each swing taking roughly the same amount of time as the last. Later systems relied on vibrations, movements so consistent they could serve as reliable reference points. The details of these mechanisms aren't important here. What matters is the idea behind them. Time is measured by choosing a process that changes in a predictable way, and then using that process as a standard. Once a reference is established, other changes can be compared to it. Motion can be described. Duration can be estimated. This approach doesn't require an understanding of what time truly is. It only requires stability. As long as the reference remains steady, the measurement remains useful. These systems continue whether or not anyone is watching them. They don't adjust themselves based on observation. They don't speed up or slow down because of attention. They simply repeat. And because of that repetition, they fade easily into the background, much like the slow, steady patterns the body is already following as it rests. Many of the reference processes used to measure time come from natural cycles. They don't need to be constructed. They simply repeat on their own. The rotation of the Earth creates a regular pattern of light and darkness. This cycle remains steady even when it isn't being observed. The movement of the Earth around the Sun creates longer patterns. Seasons shift gradually. Changes unfold over months rather than moments. These cycles don't respond to human schedules. They continue whether or not anyone marks them. Because they repeat so consistently, they can be used as shared reference points. One cycle can be compared to another. Shorter changes can be placed within longer ones. Over time, more precise systems were developed. not to change the nature of time, but to describe it more consistently. Modern measurement relies on processes that are extremely regular, so regular that small variations become noticeable only with careful instruments. The details of these systems aren't important for rest. What matters is that they behave the same way again and again. They don't drift without cause. They don't respond to expectation. Once established, they continue quietly in the background. This is what makes them useful, and also what makes them easy to ignore. When a system behaves predictably, the mind doesn't need to monitor it closely. There's no need to stay alert for sudden change. Time, as it's measured in science, doesn't rush forward. It doesn't slow itself down. It's described through steady reference processes that continue regardless of attention. On a night like this, those references don't need to be consulted. They don't need to be counted. The patterns continue without effort. Light will return after darkness. The cycle will repeat. And while these measurements remain in place, there's nothing that needs to be tracked. The mind can let go of sequence. It doesn't need to know what comes next. The idea of time can remain soft, present but not demanding. Just another steady pattern, moving quietly in the background as the body continues resting. Beyond the clocks and reference systems used in science, there is another way time is experienced. Not through numbers, but through the body itself. Living systems follow internal patterns that repeat over regular intervals. These patterns are often referred to as biological rhythms. One of the most familiar is the daily rhythm that aligns with light and darkness. This pattern is commonly known as the circadian rhythm. It doesn't require awareness to function. It doesn't need to be managed. It continues because the body is organized around regular cycles of activity and rest. As light changes across the day, signals are processed quietly, not as instructions, but as information. These signals influence patterns within the body. Temperature shifts slightly. Hormone levels change gradually. None of this happens all at once, and none of it needs to be noticed in order to continue. The rhythm remains present even when attention is elsewhere. During the day, the body tends to be more active. At night, many processes slow. Energy is redirected. These changes don't follow a strict schedule that must be enforced. They adapt gently to the environment. If the timing shifts from one day to the next, the rhythm doesn't break, it adjusts. This flexibility is part of what allows the body to remain stable. Within the brain, time is not tracked with a single clock. Instead, groups of cells respond to patterns in light and darkness. They don't count hours, they respond to change. This response is gradual. Signals accumulate. Effects unfold over time. The body doesn't need to check the time to know when to slow down. It responds to cues that have been repeating for a very long time. As evening progresses, certain systems become less active. Others take on a quieter role. These shifts don't require effort. They are part of a process that has been refined through repetition. Even when routines change, the underlying rhythm remains. It doesn't disappear when it's disrupted. It simply continues, finding a new balance over time. This is why biological time often feels different from measured time. Minutes on a clock may pass evenly, but the body experiences them in waves. Some moments feel extended, others pass without being noticed. This variation doesn't indicate a problem. It reflects the way internal systems respond to context. At night, When external demands decrease, these rhythms become easier to follow. There is less competition for attention, fewer signals asking for response. The body naturally shifts toward a quieter mode. None of this requires instruction. None of it depends on intention. The processes continue whether or not they are named. As you rest, these internal patterns remain active in the background. They don't need to be observed. They don't need to be guided. They operate at their own pace. And because they are shaped by repetition rather than urgency, they tend to feel steady. Time, in this biological sense, isn't something to keep up with. It isn't something to fall behind on. It's simply the ongoing rhythm of living systems adjusting to their surroundings. That rhythm doesn't demand awareness. It doesn't ask for attention. It continues quietly, alongside the slow movement of breath and the stillness of the body. In physics, time has often been described in very simple terms, as something that moves forward steadily. In early scientific models, time was treated as uniform. It progressed at the same rate everywhere, independent of what was happening around it. This idea made it possible to describe motion clearly. Objects moved through space. Events followed one another in a consistent order. With time assumed to be steady, changes could be compared. Speeds could be calculated. Durations could be estimated. This approach worked well for many everyday situations. It allowed scientists to predict how systems would behave under familiar conditions. In this view, time didn't react to events. It didn't change based on location or motion. It provided a stable background against which everything else unfolded. Because of this stability, time was often treated as something absolute. The same everywhere. The same for everyone. This made scientific descriptions simpler. It reduced the number of variables that needed to be considered. For a long time, this understanding matched observation closely. The motions of planets, the behavior of objects on Earth, the passage of time appeared consistent. Even today, this model is still useful in many contexts. For motions that are slow relative to everyday experience. For systems where extreme conditions are not involved. In these situations, time behaves predictably. It can be treated as a steady progression. This predictability is important. It allows systems to be described without constant adjustment. The equations that rely on this view don't require time to behave differently from one moment to the next. They assume continuity. As long as conditions remain familiar, this assumption holds. From the perspective of rest, this idea of time feels intuitive. Moments follow one another evenly. Nothing accelerates or slows without cause. The body is accustomed to this sense of progression. It aligns well with everyday experience. Time moves forward. Events unfold. Changes occur gradually. There is no need to question this movement in order to rest. The idea of steady time can remain in the background, present but not demanding, just another stable element in a system that continues quietly on its own. As scientific measurements became more precise, small differences began to appear, not in everyday experience, but under conditions that were carefully observed. These differences suggested that time does not always behave in exactly the same way for all systems. Based on current scientific understanding, time can be influenced by motion and by gravity. These effects are not noticeable in ordinary situations. They don't alter daily routines. They don't affect the way nights unfold. They become measurable only when conditions are extreme, when speeds are very high, or when gravitational forces are very strong. Under these conditions, time does not stop. It continues to move forward, but its rate can differ slightly from one system to another. This doesn't mean that time becomes unpredictable. The effects follow precise, testable patterns. They have been measured repeatedly. They align with mathematical models used in modern physics. Even so, these differences are small. On a human scale, they remain far beyond awareness. For the purposes of rest, time behaves as it always has. Steady, uninterrupted. There is no sudden shift, no moment when time needs to be redefined. The broader understanding simply adds detail to how time is described. It doesn't change the quiet continuity experienced from moment to moment. In this way, scientific models of time remain practical. They allow systems to be described accurately without disrupting daily life. Time continues to provide a consistent framework. Events still unfold in sequence. Processes still progress. Nothing about this understanding introduces urgency. The differences are part of how large systems behave under specific conditions. They don't alter the familiar rhythm of evenings and nights. For the body at rest, these details remain distant. They don't require attention. Time continues quietly in the background, supporting the steady progression of processes that don't need to be monitored. There is no need to hold on to these ideas. They don't need to be remembered. They can remain where they are, soft, unexamined. The science does not demand focus. It simply describes a system that continues to move forward, consistently, without interruption. And in that consistency, there is nothing that asks the mind to stay awake. Away from models and measurements, time is also present in the systems that surround daily life. Not as an idea, but as a steady pattern of motion. The Earth continues to rotate. This movement creates the familiar cycle of day and night. It doesn't speed up or slow down based on attention. It doesn't pause. The rotation remains constant, shaping the rhythm of light and darkness across the surface of the planet. As this motion continues, shadows shift. Temperatures change gradually. Activity rises and falls. These changes are not reactions. They are outcomes. The Earth does not rotate in response to what happens on its surface. It rotates because it is already in motion. The same is true for the larger paths Earth follows. Its movement around the Sun continues along a stable orbit. This motion unfolds quietly over time. Days accumulate into months. Months settle into seasons. Nothing needs to be directed for these transitions to occur. They follow from the conditions already in place. These systems do not anticipate what comes next. They do not adjust themselves in response to expectation. They simply continue. Because of this consistency, they often fade from awareness. The passage of time is noticed only when something changes, a shift in light, a difference in temperature, a familiar pattern returning. Between these moments, time passes without drawing attention to itself. In daily life, much of this movement happens in the background. It supports routines without needing to be tracked. The body responds to these patterns naturally. Waking and resting align with cycles that repeat. This alignment does not require precision. It does not require timing to be exact. Small variations are absorbed easily. The overall rhythm remains intact. This is one of the ways time remains manageable. It does not demand constant monitoring. The systems that shape daily experience behave predictably enough that the mind can let go. There is no need to watch the Earth move, no need to mark each rotation. The process continues whether or not it is noticed. As night deepens, these familiar motions remain unchanged. The planet continues its path. Light will return when it does. Nothing about this progression requires effort. Time, in these systems, does not push forward. It does not pull anything along with it. It is simply the description of motion that continues at a steady pace. For rest, this steadiness matters. It creates an environment where nothing urgent is happening. There is no sudden shift to anticipate, no moment that requires action. The familiar movements continue quietly, and because they are so consistent, the mind does not need to stay alert. Time remains present, but it does not ask to be followed. It moves on, gently, as the body continues resting. By now, there is no need to keep track of what has already been said. Nothing here depends on remembering details. The ideas that have appeared do not build toward a conclusion. They continue whether or not they are followed. Time moves on. The body continues resting. The environment remains unchanged. There is no signal that something new is about to happen. The patterns described remain steady. They do not speed up. They do not shift direction. This repetition is intentional. When information stops changing, attention no longer needs to stay alert. The mind can remain open without monitoring. It doesn't need to check what comes next. Words may still be heard, but they don't need to be interpreted. They can pass through as sound, evenly, without forming clear ideas. The body remains supported. Breathing continues at its own pace. Nothing has shifted suddenly. Nothing is asking for response. If attention drifts away, that's expected. If it returns briefly, that's fine too. There is no correct way to experience this moment. Some nights, rest arrives quickly. Other nights, it settles in stages. Both are normal. The systems being described do not depend on awareness. They are not affected by observation. Time continues whether or not it is noticed. The same steady movement remains in place. From here on, there is no advantage in staying focused. No benefit in following each sentence. The science does not become more complex. The pace does not increase. Nothing important is being introduced. This is a point of permission. Permission to stop listening closely. Permission to let the voice become part of the background. If sleep arrives now, nothing is missed. The patterns continue without interruption. There is no moment to mark. No transition that needs to be noticed. The night does not move toward an ending. It simply unfolds. From here forward, information density remains low. Ideas return gently, not to reinforce meaning, but to maintain rhythm. The voice remains consistent. The tone does not change. There is nothing to prepare for. The body does not need instruction. The mind does not need reassurance. The steady pace is enough. Everything that matters is already in place. Over very long periods, even the most stable systems change. Not suddenly, not in ways that can be noticed from one moment to the next. These changes unfold through small adjustments that accumulate quietly over time. On a short time scale, nothing appears different. The same patterns repeat. The same motions continue. It is only when these processes are measured across long intervals that change becomes visible. In science, this kind of gradual shift is common. Large systems rarely change quickly. They adjust through repetition. This does not indicate instability. It reflects balance. When conditions remain consistent, systems evolve slowly rather than abruptly. From one night to the next, these changes are irrelevant. They do not interrupt rest. They do not alter the environment. The passage of time at this scale does not demand attention. The Earth continues its motion. Biological rhythms remain active. Physical processes follow their established paths. Small variations occur, but they are absorbed into the larger pattern. This kind of time does not rush toward an outcome. It does not build toward a result. It simply extends. Minutes, hours, and days are nested within much longer spans, each layer moving at its own pace. On a human scale, these layers blend together. The boundaries between them soften. The mind does not need to hold on to these distinctions. They are not important for rest. The body responds to the present environment, not to distant changes. What happens over years or longer does not affect this moment. The systems that shape tonight are already in place. They do not depend on long-term shifts. This is why rest does not require awareness of extended time. It only needs stability in the present. The slow processes continue far beyond immediate experience. They do not press inward. They do not create urgency. They unfold quietly, in the background. Because of this, there is no need to imagine distant futures or pasts. There is no benefit in tracking progression. The idea of long-term time can remain abstract, unformed. It does not need to be visualized. It does not need to be understood. It is enough to recognize that change can be slow and continuous at the same time, that movement does not require speed, that progression does not require awareness. The night continues within a much larger flow, one that does not interfere. And because these longer processes move so gradually, they offer no reason to stay alert. They belong to timescales where urgency does not exist. The present remains steady, quiet, and rest has space to continue without interruption. Nothing in the environment has changed. Time continues at the same pace. The body remains supported. Breathing moves on its own. There is no shift in direction, no increase in speed. The patterns described earlier are still present. They have not become more complex. They have not moved toward an ending. This steadiness is intentional. When things repeat without variation, the mind no longer needs to stay alert. There is nothing new to monitor. The same ideas return gently, not to be remembered, only to maintain rhythm. Time continues. The body rests. The night remains quiet. There is no task waiting, no moment that requires preparation. If thoughts appear, they do not need to be examined. They can pass without being followed. If awareness drifts away, it does not need to return. The voice remains consistent. Its role does not change. There is no new information being introduced, nothing to hold on to. The structure of the words becomes less important now. Meaning softens. Sentences do not need to connect. They do not need to resolve. The repetition is enough. Time does not respond to attention. It does not pause or accelerate. The systems described earlier continue quietly, just as they were. The body remains where it is, supported, unchanged. There is no reason to stay awake for what comes next. Nothing important is happening, and that is enough. The rhythm continues. Nothing shifts, nothing resolves. Time moves on quietly, without direction, without emphasis. The body remains supported. Breathing continues without being noticed. There is no change in pace, no signal marking a transition. Words arrive, then fade. They do not need to be followed. They do not need to be completed. Pauses may feel longer now, or they may pass without being noticed at all. Both are fine. The space between phrases becomes more important than the phrases themselves. Sound remains. Meaning softens. The mind does not need to hold on to anything. There is nothing to remember, nothing to finish. If sleep has already arrived, the voice continues without being heard. If awareness returns briefly, it can drift again just as easily. Nothing here depends on attention. Time does not respond to being noticed. It continues whether or not it is observed. The same steady movement remains in place, unchanged, uninterrupted. The night does not move toward an ending. It simply unfolds. Sentences do not need to connect. Thoughts do not need to form. The rhythm is enough. Breathing continues. The body rests. Sound remains in the background. Quiet. Even. There is no conclusion waiting. No final idea to reach. The words no longer carry information. They only carry pace. That pace does not need to be understood. It can remain where it is. Soft, unremarkable, like slow movement in the distance, like patterns that do not announce themselves. Nothing more is required. The night continues, time continues, and rest remains.